Claude Code manages 80 to 90% of my YouTube content strategy now, from analyzing competitors to content gap analysis, generating titles, even generating a set of high click-through rate thumbnails that I can A/B test. And it does all of this using Claude plugins. So today I'm going to walk you through step-by-step how plugins work and then how I built this specific plugin to essentially be my entire YouTube strategy team. More importantly, I'm going to be making this public so that you can download this and use it completely free. And even if you don't make YouTube content, hopefully this will be a good learning experience so that you can see the power of Claude plugins and how you could build something similar for your workflow so that you can solve some really long-running problems and tasks. So let's demo how this works. This is just Claude Code, and I'm running the Claude extension in VS Code, but you can run it in your terminal as well. And I'm just going to tell it to help me plan my next video. Help me plan my next video on turning Claude Code into my YouTube content strategist using Claude plugins. I want to start by giving a brief overview of Claude plugins, what they are, how they work, and then show a step-by-step guide of how I built this YouTube content strategist plugin. Okay, so you're going to see Claude making a plan here. It's got a list of to-dos, and then it's automatically going to start calling some skills. Here you see it's calling on the skill provided by this plugin. The plugin is called YouTube Content Strategist, and the skill it's invoking is YouTube Research Video Topic. So it's going to start researching this video topic, and it's going to create a research document, and then it's going to systematically create different research tasks. So you can see those are created up here. And these research tasks are really kicking in individual subagents. So we have our YouTube researcher, and you can see it's calling multiple subagents in parallel to look at different aspects. The first one is to look at my own channel's videos to understand what content exists, and then to look at Claude Code plugin videos. So videos that already exist about plugins specifically, then some YouTube automation tool videos, and Claude AI tutorials. So you can see it's giving a pretty comprehensive, wide search, and it's doing all of this in parallel because, of course, Claude can call subagents in parallel, which is really nice because it makes it really efficient. And so all of these MCP tools that you see are being called, which is dozens and dozens of tools, are the tools that the subagents are actually calling. So none of this context is going into the main agent's context window. So the system is really efficient. And if we keep scrolling down, you can see each one of those tasks or subagents performing research were just completed. Claude Code is going to now synthesize everything into the research report and then move on to the next step. Here you saw it use the research skill. It's also got skills for every other part of building this YouTube content plan. So it's got skills for creating YouTube titles, for creating YouTube thumbnails using the Nano Banana API, as well as a skill for creating hooks that pair with the title and thumbnails. So it just updated the research document, and now it's moving on to generating the YouTube titles. And you can see it's calling now that next skill to generate the YouTube titles. Each one of these skills is specifically designed with a bunch of design requirements and best practices, for example, for creating YouTube titles. So we're going to take a look at that in a bit, but you're going to have all of this code available to you for free. So you're welcome to also look at how each individual skill was designed. So it just finished generating the titles. Now it's going to start drafting up some thumbnail concepts. In my project, you can see it's created this YouTube folder, and it's created a folder for this specific episode called Claude Code YouTube Strategist. So we can see it has the research document in here, and you'll notice that this is a very detailed doc. Again, this is all laid out in the research skill. So it's going to start by looking at my own channel and understanding what is the type of content I'm posting, what are the previous videos that I've posted, which videos have done well, what's my content coverage. And then it's going to look at other competing videos. So we saw that it had searched for Claude Code plugin specific videos. It also took different angles and looked at YouTube automation AI. And so it's finding all of this existing content on YouTube, and then it'll analyze all of this existing content to identify gaps for our video to fill. So just doing this research alone would have taken me an hour previously to do on my own. And I definitely wouldn't have been this detailed and been able to get this much data into a document like this. So what's really nice is it'll rank all of the opportunities. And this is going to serve as the basis for generating the rest of the plan or the content strategy. It's all based off of this research and real data about what's on YouTube right now and what my actual channel is posting. Here's an example of another plan that I ran while I was testing earlier. You can see at the top we have our research summary of all the findings in the research document. And then we have our title options for all 3 titles that were generated, plus a star rating for each one based on what Claude recommends, and then a check mark for the one that I selected as the user. Then you have the thumbnail concepts, again with star ratings based on which ones Claude recommends the most, and then as well as the user selection. And then our hooks. And then at the very bottom, we have a high-level outline, and then our final plan at the very bottom with each of the selected title, thumbnail, plus hooks. And then you can see the thumbnail variations for A/B testing all in this single report so that you can immediately just implement this. So again, it's taken me hours to really hone this plugin in and dial in the skills to get the output to be exactly how I want it. But now that I have it, it saves me so many hours a week. And I hope by walking you through how this plugin is built and the individual skills, you'll be able to solve similar workflows for your own personal use case. Now, don't worry if you're non-technical. I'm going to walk you through step by step how to do all of this, and it's really not as bad as it seems. So if you're already using Claude Code, you will definitely be able to do everything that I'm going to show you here. This is also, I think, a really good learning experience for how to use Claude Code for solving really complex problems that you have. So even if you don't make YouTube content, again, follow along and I guarantee you will take away some really good insights. So this is an overview of what we're going to be building. You have your system with Claude Code on it. There's this idea of plugin marketplaces where you can download or add plugins from. And marketplaces are just where plugins are hosted, where the code lives. So that could be on GitHub. It could be a local marketplace, which is literally just a folder on your computer. It could be on your Google Drive. It's literally just a folder that can be saved anywhere and has plugins in it. I have this AI Launchpad marketplace that I am hosting on GitHub. You're going to be adding my marketplace to your Claude Code on your system, and that's going to allow you to install and use this YouTube Content Strategist plugin. Now, this plugin has some dependencies because it's actually running code in the background. Again, it's using this ThumbKit CLI tool to work with the Nano Banana API to generate the actual thumbnail images. So you're going to have to install ThumbKit as well. That's super easy because we're going to be leveraging UV, which I'm going to show you. Chances are you might already have this installed on your system, but UV is a really convenient environment and project management for Python projects and tools. This CLI tool that I've built is hosted on GitHub, so you'll be able to pull that and install it globally on your system. So that basically anywhere you run Claude Code in any project folder or terminal, it will have access to ThumbKit and be able to generate thumbnails for you in any project. Now, the reason why this is a preferred architecture design where we have our marketplace hosted in a GitHub repo versus ThumbKit as a separate CLI tool in its own repo is because for both of these, whenever updates are made either to the plugin or the CLI tool, or there are bug fixes or improvements, those can just be pulled by anyone using both the plugin and the CLI tool. So it's a really nice way for everyone that's using it to easily be able to update their own Claude Code whenever an improvement is rolled out. Let's quickly cover what plugins are. Plugins are a super simple idea. It's just a folder that combines all of the commands, agents, hooks, skills, and MCP servers that you can use with Claude Code. So it's like if I configured Claude Code to solve a problem like I have here for managing my YouTube, I can package all of that up into a plugin. You can then add that plugin to your Claude Code and it'll work exactly the same as the way I've configured my Claude Code. So that's essentially what plugins are. And this is a high-level schematic of what a plugin looks like. Again, it's just a folder, and it's going to have these subfolders where we're going to save our commands, agents, skills, hooks, etc., and have this JSON file that defines some metadata for the plugin. So this is what you're going to be installing, is essentially this folder. To make things easier setting up your Claude Code and just getting started with playing around with the plugin, I've created this AI Launchpad YouTuber project. So this is an example of once you've installed the YouTube Content Strategist plugin, it is a general tool to create YouTube thumbnails, titles, research, and plans, etc. But it's not going to have all of your own personal data. In this project, I'm showing you an example of how you can set up your own project to use the plugin while customizing it to your specific channels. So here, for example, I have this assets folder where I've loaded some headshots of a random person like I showed you before. We have some icons for official logos that we want to use because we don't want it to hallucinate and just make up what it thinks these logos should look like. We have some thumbnail templates where maybe we want to leverage predefined designs and just build on top of them. And then finally, even proven thumbnails, which are just randomly downloaded from other YouTubers that our agent can use to transfer styles from these thumbnails in creating our own thumbnails. So this is a really simple one where the agent can create a super simple thumbnail that looks like this, but with our headshot. So I'm going to walk you through setting this up. And if you want to, you can skip ahead to just installing ThumbKit and the plugin to work with your own existing Claude Code projects. Again, it's just a super simple example of how you can use this plugin. So we're going to start by cloning this. You're going to want to copy the GitHub URL here. And just scrolling down through the README for this, there is a requirement section as well as getting started, which is going to walk you through step by step on how to get this set up. But we're going to do this together now. Just open up a terminal or shell and navigate to the folder where you want to create this project. And then we're just going to git clone that URL that we just copied. Once that gets copied over to your system, you can cd into the new project, which is going to be the AI Launchpad YouTuber. Once you're here, I'm going to open this up in VS Code, but you can open it in whatever IDE you're using. So I'm just going to do code dot. So we're just going to follow these requirements step by step. The first thing we need to do is install UV if you don't already have it. So you can just follow the directions here. This has directions to install using a single command for Mac or for Windows. Then we're going to need to get our YouTube API keys. So if you click on that link, you'll get the full instructions for setting up an API key for the YouTube Data API. Basically, you're going to want to head over to console.cloud.google.com. And If it's your first time here, you might not have any projects, but just make sure that you're logged in with the Google account that's associated with your YouTube account as well. Then you're going to create a new project. So I'm going to call this YouTube Content Manager, and then we'll go ahead and create that. That might take a few seconds. Then once that's created, we can select the project. And just to make sure that you have the right project selected, it should show up here in the project picker. On the left menu, we can click on APIs and services, and then enable APIs and services. Search for the YouTube data API, and then click on the YouTube data API and enable it. Once it's enabled, you should see on the top that there's this pop-up to create credentials. So you're going to want to click on that. And then we're going to access public data. So you can select public data and then next. And then it's recommended that you restrict the key. So we're going to click on restrict key. We don't need an application restriction, but we're just going to click on restrict to the YouTube data API, since that's the only API we actually need to use with this API key. So we'll click save. And now here in the credentials tab for APIs and services, you can see our API key here was created. I'm just going to scroll over to the right and then click on these actions and then edit this API key to rename it. So I'll call it YouTube Content Strategist. And then go ahead and save that. Now we're going to head back over to our project and then just copy this .env example and then rename it so that it just says .env. So this is going to be our actual secrets file, and you should see that get ignored. Now you can scroll to the right in the Google Cloud Console, click on Show Key, and then go ahead and copy it. Then head back to your project and set your YouTube API key. Next, we need a Gemini API key to use with the Nano Banana model. You can head over to aistudio.google.com/app/API-keys, just like you see up here, and then create a new API key. And then just to give you an idea on the usage and costs that I've incurred by using this over the last month, I can go into usage here and you can see all of my requests for the last 28 days. The most I've had was 65 in one day, but I've generated over 100 thumbnails using the API. And if we go to billing, you can see for the last month period, I've spent about $5. So you can take that as a rough estimate of how much it's cost me to generate all these thumbnails. It's been about $5 for 100 or so images. Now, once you've created your API key and copied it, go ahead and set it in that same env file. Finally, the last step is to install ThumbKit as a UV tool, and you can do that with this one line. Of course, this just depends on you having UV, so make sure you have UV installed already. So if you open up a terminal, you can type in UV, and you should see this help menu for UV. That just validates that you have it installed. And then you can go ahead and paste that command, which is UV tool install, and then the GitHub repo for the CLI. So if we hit enter, that's going to go ahead and install it. For me, it's already installed, so you can see it says already installed. Now you can run the command UV tool list and look at the list of UV tools that you have installed. And these are, again, available globally. So they can be accessed from any project and any terminal on your system. To verify that it's installed, I should be able to just type in ThumbKit, and then you should see something like this, which is the help menu showing the usage for it. So here you can see if we type in ThumbKit docs, this would display the full CLI documentation on how to use this. And what's cool is all of this can be done by Claude, so it can read the documents as it needs to on the fly. So that's it for the requirements. Now we just have to make sure that we add the marketplace that has our plugin and then install the YouTube Content Strategist plugin. So heading back over to the README for this repo, we've already cloned it. We've already CD'd in there. We've set our environment variables. We can run this command here to now add the plugin marketplace. And I've gone ahead and copied that, and I'll just hop over to the repo here so that you can see this is a separate repo for my marketplace. And what's nice about this is that as we release other Claude plugins, they'll all be in this one marketplace. So once you've added this marketplace, you can just install the ones that you want to, as well as keep them up to date. But yeah, by making it open source, it allows all of us to contribute and improve this over time, as well as build other useful plugins that the community can use. So I'm really excited to launch this marketplace, and I'll definitely do a separate video for this. Coming back to the project, open a new terminal and start up Claude. And then you can access plugins with a /command plugin. Here you can manage the different plugins and marketplaces. So if we go to manage marketplaces, you'll see no marketplaces are configured right now because I went ahead and removed everything so we can do everything from scratch together. So if you hit escape, you can go back, and we can do it interactively by adding a marketplace here and then just typing in the GitHub repo. But since we copied the command, you can also just run this command directly, which is /plugin marketplace add and the GitHub repo, just like this. So if we do that, that'll get added automatically. You can see successfully added marketplace. Now, if we go back to the plugin menu, we can go to browse and install plugins, and we have to choose the marketplace. So now you can see our new AI Launchpad marketplace. And here is the YouTube Content Strategist plugin. So we can go ahead and install this. Click install now. Now you can see it was installed, and we have to restart Claude Code. So I'll open a new terminal and kill the current one. And then we can start up Claude again and go to the plugin menu, go to manage and uninstall plugins, go to the AI Launchpad. And now you can see that this has a green dot next to it because it is installed. So we can escape out of this. And now if you do a /context, you'll see that we have two new custom agents from this plugin. So this is the YouTube Content Strategist plugin, and it has a YouTube researcher as well as a thumbnail reviewer. And if we scroll up, we'll see that there are a bunch of new MCP tools, again, coming from the plugin, which we didn't have before. But it's still relatively lightweight. We only have one MCP server for interacting with the YouTube data API. And that's the nice thing about using ThumbKit as a CLI tool, because it's not taking up this MCP tool context by preloading all of the tools as an MCP server. So if we look at the breakdown here, you can see system tools actually takes up 7.3% of our context window, whereas the MCP tools only take up 3.5%. So you can see this plugin is pretty efficient. Really, the only load on the context window that we're introducing is with the MCP tools. So this 3.5% taken up by the MCP tools is completely from our plugin. But everything else, like the system tools and automatic compact buffer, are just default in Claude Code. Now let's talk about this project. So I've included a settings.json in this .claude folder for you. This is just going to pre-approve a lot of the tools that will commonly be called when you have this plugin installed, like the different skills, ThumbKit commands, different reference documentations from the different skills that are going to be read, as well as the more common MCP tools. So this is just going to make it slightly less annoying for you to use with all of these tools being pre-approved. Then we have the assets folder, which, like I said, I included just as an example of how you could configure this with your own personal data. So you can add whatever you want in here. And the important part here is the claude.md file, which really outlines the details of what these different assets are and what they should be used for. Finally, in the root, you'll notice we have another Claude MD file. So this is loaded into every conversation start with Claude. And here I've just included information about my channel. So you can replace this with your data. And then we're also going to point it to the Claude MD file that explains all of the assets. So what's nice about this is loaded at the conversation start, and you can see how lightweight it is. That's why there's barely any space taken up in the context window, because it's only going to go and read about these assets when it needs to. So it's going to progressively load this context as needed. So that's it. You can now use Claude Code in this project to start creating some YouTube content strategy. And if you open up the README, I have some usage examples of things you can prompt with. So let's say we only want to create a video thumbnail. We don't want to go through everything else. You can use all of the individual skills in this plugin individually. So it can help you with research, with generating titles, thumbnails, hooks, etc., all individually. But of course, you can also create the full plan like you saw us do together. So if we open up Claude Code extension and turn on edit automatically, we can paste in this example prompt and then have it create this thumbnail. So here's the thumbnail it generated, and you can see that the text is a little small, but otherwise it's a pretty good starting point. We can actually go back and forth with it and have it iterate on this thumbnail, and we could do the same thing when we're creating the full plan to get the thumbnails exactly how we want them. Change the input text to be an emoji of a light bulb. So it'll generate the prompt to make the edit and then call that thumbkit command to edit it. And then we get the edited version here, which you can see sometimes the Nano Banana model doesn't really follow directions. What's really cool is that Claude is multimodal. So given this plugin and its understanding of what our goal is, it immediately reads the edited thumbnail and sees that this isn't quite right. And so without me asking, it's going to reprompt it to try to fix this error for us. And you can see it explains that here. I see the light bulb emoji was added above the input node, but the input text is still there. Let me edit it again. So it's really taking initiative to meet our expectations of what we want. And then you can see the second time that it prompts it, we get it exactly as we want. So this is a really cool part of using skills and plugins with Claude Code, because Claude Code is such a smart agent and so capable. It's able to make these kinds of proactive decisions without us explicitly telling it every step that it needs to do. Finally, let's dive into how this plugin is designed and how it works. Now, we mentioned it's ultimately just a folder that compiles the different commands, agents, hooks, and MCP servers for Claude. So here's my AI Launchpad marketplace, and here is the one plugin that we have, the YouTube Content Strategist. So it's literally just this folder. I have it open in VS Code here so we can look through this project. We have a .claude-plugin folder. This is a required folder and file for Claude to recognize it as a plugin. So we can see we have this plugin.json file, and this is just where we have the name, description, version of the plugin. So whenever I make updates to it, or we have a contribution from the community and an improvement to this, we'll roll out a new version of this and make an announcement of it. So besides that, here you can see we have 3 folders for agents, servers or MCP servers, and skills. We don't have any hooks set up for this plugin yet. We might add some in the future, but right now we're not using any. So if we click into agents, you'll see that we have a thumbnail reviewer and a YouTube researcher. So opening up the YouTube researcher, this is all just standard Claude Code stuff. So if you're not familiar, this is just a simple markdown file with some metadata at the top where we define the agent's name, a description of when this subagent should be used and what for. We can also specify a model, and you'll notice here I use Haiku 4.5 because it's really fast and good enough for searching things on the web or YouTube and simply summarizing information. So it's not doing anything super complex. It's just gathering information and compressing it into some summary. So Haiku is plenty good for that. So we can use a faster and cheaper model for this. And then we have all of the tools that we're giving this agent access to. So feel free to read through this to see how the YouTube researcher works. We also have a thumbnail reviewer, and this is just to catch any mistakes in the initial design of the thumbnail and just as a second pass to make sure that it meets all of the design requirements that we're setting for creating really high quality thumbnails. For servers, we just have one MCP server, and I actually cloned this from an existing repo. This is an MCP server that's typically hosted on Smithery, and you can run it as a remote MCP server. I've cloned it here so that it can always be ran locally, and that way you don't need to rely on some external remote server, and it just makes everything easier to use. So that's our only MCP server. Now, in addition to having the MCP server files in here, we can also use remote MCP servers. And whether we're using local or remote MCP servers, everything is defined in this .mcp JSON. So this is in the plugin root. And if we click into this, you can see the one MCP server that we have configured, the YouTube Analytics MCP server. And this is going to be loading the YouTube API that we set in the environment file. We also use UV to actually run this server. So that's another reason why UV is a dependency. Now, moving on to the meat and potatoes of this whole setup, which is the skills. The skills are really what make this plugin so magical. It's essentially what replaces an entire YouTube content strategy team. Right now, we have 5 skills. Some of these are more atomic than others. What I mean by that is generating a title is a much smaller focused problem than, for example, generating an entire video plan. So I know that this can still be so much better, and I will continue improving this over time by breaking things out into more concrete individual skills and hopefully improving the system over time. So for example, how research is done, I want it to meet certain criteria when performing research. And so I'm sure I'll be breaking some of the research out into more refined skills over time. But also even the thumbnail skill, for example, that still has a lot of room for improvement. As you've seen in some of the thumbnails, they're good, but they could be much better. So let's look at the YouTube title skill as an example. We have our skill.md file, which is going to be the main knowledge and orchestrator of this skill, pointing to other references or other documents and context as needed. We're going to start by explaining what this skill is, when it should be used. And then here you can see we're pointing to some additional context. So we have this design requirements markdown file in the references folder. So if we expand this, you can see the design requirements here. And we're saying that this is mandatory reading. Before generating any title, Claude has to read through this whole thing. And this is basically explaining how you design a really good title. So we have curiosity generation as a core requirement. It needs to complement the thumbnail, forbidden patterns, etc. So as you can imagine, each one of these skills should be highly tuned to that specific thing. So the way to think about it is that this skill has to have everything, all of the information, all of the context that you would need to generate a really high quality title. So if we go back to the skill, you can see we even outline a very explicit workflow because we want it to perform these steps every single time. So it needs to start with gathering context, reading the design requirements, identifying the question that we're trying to answer, generating the title options, presenting them to the user and refining, etc., and then iterating. Similarly, we have our YouTube thumbnail skill, and we start by explaining that we have this CLI tool called ThumbKit, that it should be available and installed globally, and it can test the installation by running ThumbKit. So if it runs into any problems, we actually do explain how it would install it if it's not installed, how to upgrade it if it's on a different version, how to read the documentation, etc. Basically everything that it needs to work with ThumbKit. And we also provide an entire document reference at the GitHub link here. We also have a set of references for this skill as well. So we have our design requirements that every thumbnail needs to pass. Additionally, we have a set of prompting guidelines to teach Claude the best practices when prompting Nano Banana. And this comes straight from the documentation online from Nano Banana. So certain things like this, where we know that this is critical context for Claude to be able to do a good job, we want to front load this and make it a requirement for it to read through this documentation before creating any thumbnail, rather than leaving it up as an option. So if Claude tries to generate a thumbnail and the thumbnail isn't what it expected, or it keeps getting it wrong, rather than guessing and iterating and then maybe deciding that it should look up some documentation, we're just going to make it a requirement, and it saves a ton of time. And I think that's really the essence and idea behind skills, right? You're teaching someone, or in this case, you're teaching the agent how you would do this the right way the first time. So it's going to know exactly what it needs to do right out of the gate. Now, because I'm making this public and open source, you are totally welcome to clone this, to fork this repo, and tweak the skills to get them to work for you exactly how you want them to if you are a YouTube content creator. If you don't create content, hopefully this gives you an idea of what you can do with Claude to really solve a wide range of complex problems, and hopefully automate some of your workflows to save you, like in my case, hours in doing this every single week. By combining agents, MCP servers, skills, and leveraging all of that into one package with a Claude plugin. This also allows you to share with others, to share with your coworkers, and allows me to share them with you. That is going to do it for today's video. I hope this was informative for you guys and you learned something. And I hope that it inspires you to push the boundaries of what you can do with Claude beyond just coding tasks or vibe coding apps, to really use it as a collaborator and a coworker, and to take on more of the work that you would normally do so that you can really unlock yourself and work more as an orchestrator and kind of manager of Claude, and allow it to do some really long running work that can hopefully give you a lot of leverage. All of the code that I shared in this video will be available in the description. I do have one question that I want you guys to answer in the comments below. What kind of plugin would you want? Would you find most useful? And we'll consider building it in one of the next videos. Thanks so much for watching. And if you haven't already, check out one of my last videos, either on Claude skills or how to build a personal assistant with Claude Code. And with that, I'll see you in the next one.